want to start by just giving you a really big thank you to take the opportunity to do this series. Just to kind of set a little bit of the context, we have learned a lot about the power of having check-ins be an important part of group culture. And I've been able personally to get to know Brandon and how he's been able to implement this for the community that he's building. And I want to use this as an opportunity to share this story because it didn't all kind of go smoothly. So that's the kind of focus for today. In terms of agenda, like one, I'll take the opportunity to do a quick introduction for Brandon. Second is diving into some of the experiences that you've had as a leader and really focusing on how to drive that member engagement, which is the holy grail for us as leaders. And then third, we'll open it up to maybe some questions from folks that are able to jump on. Let me start by giving an introduction for Brandon. So I've gotten to know Brandon over a few different interactions. Brandon is a professional skateboarder. If you've ever seen one of those videos on YouTube or on social media of someone going like 60 miles an hour down a skateboard on a mountain, like Brandon's essentially one of those people. He's competed in different competitions around the world, has spent time in places like Europe, has also been stunt doubles for people like Vin Diesel in movies, an incredibly talented individual when it comes to skating. He's also a phenomenal community builder and moved to Los Angeles and started a local community group there called Vibrad, which is targeted to bring more folks into skating and build community around it. Brandon also has a nonprofit called Beyond the Board, which supports skate communities really around the world. They have phenomenal resources about community building on their website. But today we want to really dive into the experience that you've had with Vibrad in particular. Brandon, if we could start with when you first adopted Heylo, what that was originally like. And I'd love to actually just have it be really transparent about the member engagement, because I think as leaders, that's sometimes something that we would like to have happen, but doesn't always happen. So if we could go back in time, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Eric. Appreciate that big time. Yeah, it was an interesting journey. I mean, I was definitely not the first person to discover Heylo on my team. And when they mentioned it to me, I was a little bit hesitant. The only thing that made me kind of curious was that a roller skate group that we had previously collaborated with called the Skate Honeys was using it. And someone was like, "Oh, we should use this." And I was like, "Well, I don't know, another random app." Like during that year, it was probably 2022, I think, when we started using it. And it was like in that year, I had already downloaded 5 different community apps. And I was just like, okay, it's another community app. Okay, whatever. So early on, I wasn't like super sold on it. I was like, okay, we'll try it, we'll download it, whatever. Cool, we'll do it. And it was pretty clear quickly that like, oh, this is actually designed for group leaders and not designed as like an event discovery platform. And after the first month and after me digging around, I was like, okay, this is a tool for us as leaders, because at the time we were doing so much of our communication through just Instagram posts, and like that's cool when it's cool. And at the time I had a great social media following, and so I was able to rally some people and get people excited, but you just didn't have that direct connection with people. So if something changed about the event, it's like, how do we tell them? We post on the stories, but maybe they don't see it, maybe they don't even know to check there. And so things felt really sloppy, and it felt like as a leader, a lot of elements around hosting gatherings was a little bit out of our control. And so yeah, in the beginning it was tricky. I think the first few events we hosted on Heylo, we probably had 15 people join and probably a total of 3 people check in, probably the people that were on our leadership team. And we've learned so much about just how to manage check-ins. Also at that time, we were like, oh, cool, we can add multiple hosts. So we had our whole leadership team, 6 to 10 people, like be the host of the event. That created its own problems because then people don't know who the actual host is. Also, some of those people didn't show up. And so we had more hosts than more hosts than members at a lot of our events. And things just felt really all over the place. And it took us some time to really dial in and figure that out. But truthfully, Eric, we haven't that much energy and focus into dialing in our check-ins until just like 6 months ago.
Amazing. What inspired you 6 months ago to start to focus on that for you and for the leadership team? Like, what was the kind of original inspiration for trying to focus more on making sure members are checking in?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just network connectivity is huge in any community. 1 year ago, we had like less than 50% of people checking in. So the problem is less than 50% of the people were using the app, and so many new people that were joining for the first time weren't using it. And so we kept getting questions like, wait, when's the next event? Or wait, is it in the same spot? All these questions. And so not as many people were coming to our events, and not as many people were using the platform. So when people were sharing community events and sharing resources and different things like this, it just wasn't that valuable for anybody, or it wasn't as valuable as it could have been. And I was like, if we have people more habitually using this, it just creates a flywheel around this being so much more valuable for everybody. And so kind of in the past year, we started taking our organization a lot more seriously and creating like strong frameworks for our leadership team and check-in flow and like pre-event, post-event checklists. Once we had that foundation of like how we're running things, it's like, okay, cool. Now how do we really maximize and get the most energy out of Heylo?
Amazing. How's the organization set up in terms of you and the leadership team? How have you designed it thus far?
Yeah, so it's a constant iteration. But currently we have 6 leadership members. I think more than 10 is too many. I think probably more than 4 is too small. Currently we have 6. We do it in like semesters. So people commit to a 6-month commitment. January and July are the 2 months there. We do monthly meetings to review events and all these things and plan stuff. And then yeah, each person has like kind of a different specialty or different role. It's been good to have checks and balances as well.
Excellent. And then when you did implement more of a culture around check-ins and taking attendance, what was the impact that you saw on the community overall?
Big time, much more retention, much more like repeat visitors. For example, just before this call, I tried to go in and get some notes and data. So I had it high level. 1 year ago, we had about 50% of people come to our events check in. In July, when we started taking this more seriously, we had 65% of people that attended our events check in. And now we have over 90 just a couple months later. There's a few things that went into that. One of the things we started doing was posting a monthly check-in leaderboard. That was one of the things we started back in August, where we would specifically be like, yo, boom, we had this many events. Here's everyone that attended 4+ events or 3+ events or 2+ events. The cool part about that was it was really reinforcing that there was almost like this social status a little bit with check-ins, rewarding people for like being active and checking in. The trickle down of that's been huge. And even when I look back at our August to our October leaderboard, we had the same amount of events. In August, we had 12 people join 4 or more events. And in October, we had 20 people, right?
Wow.
So it's almost double the amount of people. Same thing for August, we had 25 people join 3 or more events. And in October, 34 people. That's like
Wow.
50% more people. And I want to be clear on this too. There are way less people joining our events in general, and there's way less excitement. I would imagine that in the summer, we would have way more people. What really changed is our retention just got so much better. Throughout the summer, people were coming once or twice maybe, and now everyone that's coming more than once, it's like almost double. Our base has grown almost double.
Some of the events that you were hosting, even like a year ago, have you seen folks who are showing up? How has that trended for you? Is it increasing as well?
Yeah.
Have been like pretty stable, and do you find it's like similar people now that are coming back?
Right. Yeah, it's a great question. We've always had a core group. It's evolved over the years, and 2 years ago, it was a totally different group than it is now. But in general, through putting way more attention and energy into these check-ins, our core group, it's really like doubled. And with our core group doubling, the experience has been so much better for people because there's such a stronger level of familiarity. So many more people that embody our values and our energy and our mission. And so when new people show up to our group now, it feels so much more connected, but in an open way. It's not like a clique, but it's more like a really strong, fun, supportive group.
Amazing. Did you find that there was a difference in the member engagement? And I think that could even be digitally through things like chats or even at the events. Like, could you actually notice the feel of the community change at all?
In like the past 6 months since we started Take. Yeah, definitely. We just spent a lot of time on a weekly and monthly basis refining what are the things we can do to communicate and increase value for Heylo so that it's not just pulling teeth on, hey, check into our app, because you got to communicate the value. It's got to be an invitation or else it feels forced, you know? And I think that's where a lot of leaders really struggle. When I call friends or other groups around the country and around the world, that's one thing that I always struggle with is like, they personally don't have the conviction that it's worthwhile for their members to check in. So they don't do it and they don't push it. And so we just got really clear on like creating a couple touch points that give us and give my leadership team the assertiveness and the conviction to be like, no, this is great for you and you can take it or not. And a couple of those things are like, we always upload group photo to the events to the chat after every event. So that's one thing, because people are like, oh, where's the group photo? It's in Heylo. That's part of our closing flow where it's like, hey, by the way, if you want the group photo, boom. By the way, if you have awesome photos or videos from this event, post it in the chat. Another thing is people will often share like, hey, my band's playing this weekend, or this is going on, or this is going on. I'm like, awesome. That's amazing. Please put that in the Heylo chat so everyone has access to it. Another thing is like, we'll always send the address to the after spot in the Heylo chat. So it's like, cool, we're going to tacos. It's down the street here. Address is in Heylo. And I think just through all these little touch points, it has allowed my team to communicate the value and be like, hey, there's all these things for you in Heylo without being like, hey, make sure you check in. And who checked in? Did you check in? Did you check in? Because that felt like really selfish in a weird way. It felt like, okay, why are we doing this? Why are we like feeding this machine? But once we got really clear on, okay, there is a lot of value in Heylo, and how can we communicate that in a way way that we genuinely feel excited about sharing with people and know is valuable for people, that everything just got so much more easy.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's really great insight. And then did you find when those people were more engaged, then they were more likely to check in, which then made them
totally.
more engaged?
Totally. And I exactly. And also just like we have a much stronger culture around checking in too.
Mhm.
Also, one of the things we did is we have a more clear and explicit like volunteer team. And one of those roles that's been potentially the most helpful is having a check-in person, somebody that 20, 30 minutes before the event, as everybody's circling up, is just like, hey, you check in on Heylo? No, you don't know what that is? Boom, right here, QR code. Someone that's friendly, someone that's kind. Because one thing that definitely didn't work is we'll tell everybody in our opening flow, hey, did you check in on Heylo? Okay, cool. That kind of works. It was like a reminder for the people that already have Heylo and were already members. They're like, oh yeah, I got to do that. But for 50% of the people, they maybe didn't even hear it or they don't even know what Heylo is. And during an opening circle, they're not going to like raise their hand and be like, wait, I don't know what that is. Can you, they're just like, I'm here. Like, it's cool. So like subtly having somebody go around and especially somebody that's focusing on less familiar faces was helpful.
That's super insightful. So that person wasn't actually taking attendance, going and finding that person and checking them in themselves. They were more encouraging the member to do it on their own, as opposed to like have it be actions the team was taking. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I want to create more of a culture around that. I mean, just the nature of our organization is probably similar to a lot of the groups on Heylo, where it's in a public space. There's not like a door, there's not a ticket. Most everything we do is like a free open event, and we start in a parking lot. So it's hard to be taking attendance at the door, right? And so if it was the sole responsibility of our team or the host to look around and try and check everybody in, it just distracts so much from the actual experience. And we were trying to do that in the moment, but really having the support of a check-in person specifically was huge.
On Heylo, there's two ways for check-ins to work. One is the host of the event or an admin of the group can go and mark people as attended or unmark people as attended. Someone can check in themselves. Do you find for your community that there's like a path that works best for you?
It's a great question. Another thing we started doing in the past 6 months, which has been really helpful, is we've been much more intentional about every time you host a gathering, we'd have like an event debrief table that'll include a column for what are some highlights from the event, what are some things that could be improved, how many people were in the group photo. Maybe there's 60 people, and then it's how many people checked in on Heylo, how many people checked in for the first time on Heylo, and so we're able to like see those numbers over time related to who was the host, what happened, what was the day, who was the check-in person.
That's really cool. I imagine you get some pretty good insights out of seeing that trend, week over week as you do those kind of like event reviews.
Totally. I'm sorry, Eric. I totally like spaced on the question you asked just before then. I was kind of answering it in a roundabout way, and then I just like totally spaced.
I actually I wasn't thinking necessarily about that, but I didn't know that you all did that, where you have these almost like event debriefs. It sounds.
Yeah.
How does
I
that work in
remember.
practice? Does the event host take the lead on like completing that table? Do you have a template that
Totally.
they act?
The host has the responsibility of doing that. And the question you asked was, do we check in during or after, and what do we do there? The host also has the responsibility of going into the group photo and looking for familiar faces and seeing who was actually there that hadn't checked in. And we'll individually message those people or remind those people, hey, just checked you in. Reminder next time, please do that.
Yep, that's great.
And that's been helpful because there was a lot of members that would come every single week and never check in.
Right.
And tying that into like our event leaderboard, I was like, man, you've been here more than anybody. You should be the number one spot or the number two or the number three spot. Month after month, you're not even on the list. And so like some of those people that were never checking on Heylo are like always doing it now because they're like, wait, I am one of the most active people here. And they want to be recognized for being one of the most active people. Us just putting the attention on that has helped a lot too.
That makes sense. Have you considered adding any incentives to those leaderboards? Because I know you got good sponsors and
Totally. It's something I've been wanting to do where each check-in could be valued at one entry for some sort of like a monthly giveaway. That would be something that wouldn't be terribly difficult for us to do. In the past 2 months, we got really excited about the idea of offering an optional membership. And it's something we'd also like to do with our paid members. We decided not to do that because we don't want to necessarily cannibalize the value of our optional paid memberships. But I do think something like that could be really cool. Even if it's just a t-shirt, maybe we just do that, a t-shirt.
Right. Is part of the value for the members on check-ins, it sounds like the way that you've structured it is to really celebrate like that leaderboard, people people who have attended this the most in October or whatnot. Do you find that the members are incentivized by these like milestones that they can achieve too, like along the way? So like their 25th Vibe Ride event, their 50th, their 100th, or do you find culturally that's just not as much of a fit for your members? They're not as incentivized by that.
With some small tweaks, it could be with some badging in the app that represents that. I think that would be cool
Yeah.
because I think right now, like it pops up in the event chat that it'll be like, oh, it's their 10th or their 25th. I feel like nobody ever responds to that. They might see it. I think even just seeing it is really cool, actually. It's like more of a subconscious thing that it's like training people to be excited or see value in that. But I'm not seeing explicit conversations or engagement around those types of things. But it totally could, like, if you get your 10th event milestone and now you get some sort of role, it's like you're a insider or you're like a whatever, or you're level 2 member, level 3 member, and having people have some sort of badging next to their name that very clearly and quickly shows that they're part of like these higher tiers or they've been a part of the community for longer. I think that could help totally. It's all stepping stones.
Yeah.
Everything you guys have been doing over the past couple of years is like, it's just inching towards becoming one of the best like group and community management platforms out there.
Yeah, very much appreciate that. That is something that we're trying to make more visible. So I'll share some updates on that soon. Let me pause and open up to see if there are other folks that have questions in our last few minutes that we have covered. I have one more, but I'll reserve it for the end. If anyone has a question, feel free to either jump in, raise your hand, and I'll make sure that you're unmuted. Hey, Chris. Hey,
Guys, hey, good. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for
So
joining.
I'm Chris with the New York Flyers. I was very interested in what you were saying about the leaderboard, and I realize this is not a how-to seminar, but is that easy to set up within the app? There's documentation of how to set up that leaderboard, and you can divide it in like, weekly, monthly, yearly type of thing.
Yeah, well, this is a recent change we made, Chris, just last week, where the leaderboard is now visible on the group tab, and it will be automatically created for you at the start of each month. And then we just recently added the ability to go back and past months, which Brandon, I think could be helpful for you too. If you view all on the leaderboard, you'll be able to see who was top in June of 2024 if you wanted to. And then giving us this feedback as well, you'll be able to export all of this. So you'll be able to get a CSV file of all events that you've hosted, as well as all the members. And then there'll be like a one for the check-ins. So you could splice this data in a lot of different ways. You could look across different time periods or sort by member to kind of do custom calculations if you wanted to.
Yeah. On that note, Chris, that's a really good point. I mentioned this leaderboard. Heylo kind of has like a leaderboard section built in now. We've actually been using it as like an announcement. So every month we'll do an announcement in the announcement channel. So everyone gets an email, everyone gets a notification, and it lives there permanently. And so I just shared it in the chat, but I'll say like, hey, this month we hosted X amount of events, 20 people, 4+, 30 people, 3+. And then I'll try to celebrate the handful of people that are in those top check-in categories, as well as just reminding people. One of the texts we use right now is this reminder that consistent check-ins helps us gauge which events are most popular, helps us leverage partnerships with brands to make sure we continue to have accessible options for new riders.
It's great. Thank you. We're going to look into that.
A little bit of manual work right now, but Halo's making it easier and easier to do that, facilitate that.
Thanks.
I just had a quick comment. I also posted it in the chat. New to the platform, been using Meetup for 10+ years, getting tired of their funny business getting sold. I just want to lead great events and have great experiences, and can't do that on Meetup anymore. I do appreciate this badging, these milestones in the platform, because it helps keep my members engaged. And I also it's kind of like doing a birthday and awarding or notifying people or letting people know that who's got birthdays this month, like an employee birthday. But with my group, I can point out people, hey, so-and-so has reached their 25th event. Congratulations. Because we always do around the circle before we start our event to introduce everybody, so everybody at least knows their names. So I think it'll be a great opportunity for me to increase engagement with my group.
Yeah, I do think having some sort of breakdown, because right now the milestones are shared in the chat, but as a leader, I don't have clarity around who reached milestones in like the past month, particularly. And I love what Richard was saying about like, if those were more explicit and more clear, being able to share like on some sort of a quarterly basis, like, or even monthly basis, potentially, here's the people that got these milestones as part of like our announcement.
Yeah, I used to have to do all that manually. I do it yearly at our holiday party. I'd have to go through all the events, couldn't download the events from Meetup. So I had to manually go in there and see who attended, add them all up, little tick marks, and do the reward. And it took hours to do that, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Richard, I imagine the members liked it.
I sure hope so. I think people will be excited. I know a couple of the folks that attend a lot of my events, they're very proud that they've attended most of my events for the year. So to actually see that people recognize that, I think will increase the engagement for the events.
Well, that's amazing that you do that. Yeah, I should get a lot easier for you. Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. I guess kind of a interesting takeaway from this for me is my night that's fairly similar to Brandon's, sort of somewhere in the 40 to 60 people range. The key thing, I think the thing for me that's more important than a check-in is an event sign-up. So knowing before the event how many people are coming, so we know how many leaders, so that we tell the bar the right number of people so they get extra staff if we're having a big night, all that sort of stuff. I've seen it as get the event signups right, and then we'll deal with check-ins later. Brandon's clearly gone, let's get event check-ins, and to check in, you have to sign up. So it's a kind of interesting, different way around it. I think most of the people coming are on Heylo, but they just haven't signed up for whatever reason. The events where we have had it perfect, it's where we limit the number, people do sign up. And we've never had, it was full, but I just thought I'd turn up anyway. It's always like where we've done a bigger event or something where for the numbers I'm comfortable running 21K across the hills, I can't have 60 people turn up if I haven't got the right number of people. So limiting the numbers has meant that people have fully signed up and checked in. I guess driving the event sign up through the check-in in that sort of reverse switch around way is kind of interesting. And yeah, it's hard to justify why check-in. I can justify why you sign up so much easier than why you can check in. And milestones and badges is helping. On the big event when it's a 60, it's every week. Like my check-in numbers are probably less than 10 out of 50 for those nights. But so like a Thursday where they go trail runs, they use it as a safety feature. And because it's smaller numbers, it's usually around 10. Everyone is signed up, everyone is checked in. And then that's the list they use to check everyone's back off the mountain at the end of the night. So it's just harder when it's, as brands, you meet in a public place and people come from all directions. They arrive within 5 minutes of each other. So it needs that group culture. And it does need somebody going around and tapping on the shoulder and going, hey, come on. And once they see, it's critical mass stuff. If 45 out of the 50 have done it, chances are it'll be 46 the next week and 47 the week after.
Totally. I feel like also a big thing for us was like our top 10% most active members were the worst at checking in because they'd been with the group forever and they're like, I don't care. Like, why am I checking in? Like, whatever. And it was like having a conversation with those people and just being really clear that, hey, we're leading by example here. And just being super clear on like, everyone gets more value out of this if we interact more. Because if nobody engages with it, there's not much value. But if people are checking in, that means people are checking the Heylo app. And that means people are able to post questions. And when they post questions, more people are going to see it and respond. More people are going to feel encouraged to share about a social gathering they're hosting or about some other event they're attending and want to bring people to. And so there's just more network connectivity, us being like, hey, you're top 10, let's see it. I think that helped a lot because they saw other people on the leaderboard. Now the leaderboard's much more explicit directly in Heylo all time. You have 40 check-ins. I know you should have 100. Like, what's going on here? So some of them were like trying to play catch up to secure their spot.
Just a quick comment. I know leaderboards work. I did a citywide scavenger hunt in Portland over 3 weeks, and I updated the leaderboard every day who reached milestones, and people were just driving hard. Some would take a day off of work so they could catch up. It was pretty amazing.
Do you have any incentives around that, or is it just kind of?
Yeah, I made custom T-shirts for the people that came in and awarded prizes for the top 5 finishers. So yeah, it was pretty amazing.
That's a great idea.
I just shared something in the chat, which is basically how we communicate Heylo in our opening flow. I feel like even just 6 months ago, it was so bad. A year ago, we were like, okay, we should, be telling people to check in and using it and whatever. And I feel like my whole team would like go on a rant around like, okay, well, Heylo, it's like this app, and then you check in, and we like check-ins, and there's a waiver, and you should do it because it's good, and it's just like awesome. They would like ramble for like a whole minute, and people go like, okay. It felt like a really, really bad sales pitch. It felt like we were being paid to say it, but we did a really shitty job. It was like felt like somebody had to say it, but it just wasn't there. So once we condensed it to this, where it's like, yo, and what is Heylo? Heylo is our community platform we use to manage check-ins, and it's the best way for you to connect with members in the community and stay up to date on upcoming events. That one 15-second line, you don't need to say more than that. Keep it super clear, keep it super concise. And also this bit of text is almost exclusively for the new members. There might only be one new member at your event. There might be two, there might be three, whatever. But I think one thing our leadership team and our hosts were doing for a while is they'd look around the group and they'd be like, well, this is 95% the same people. Why do I got to say this? Everyone already knows what Heylo is. But it's like, what are we trying to do? Like, if you're not growing, you're shrinking. We need to make sure that like the people that are new to the community have a clear idea of who we are, what to expect, why we're asking them to do these things. Because if we don't, and what I see with so many communities around the world is that they grow to up to a certain level, they like almost form this like insular shield around themselves where they're not growing anymore and they just have this tight group. And then over time, members just like drop off and the group like grows to a certain point and then just like fizzles out. And so like us making sure that our opening flow is primarily talking to brand new people, it ensures that like when people come one time, they're significantly more likely to come 2 times and 3 times and 4 times. And we see that like in our retention around like check-in numbers and percentage and all that. So I think a lot of these things that kind of tie into each other. It's not just the check-ins, but it's like how you communicate everything. And I think a big part that almost everyone overlooks is like, even if there's only one new person, you have to speak to that new person like they've never been there before because they haven't. Even though you're addressing the group, I think you need to address the group with that person in mind.
That's so insightful. I think that's so smart. I think one thing too that Chris said that stands out in my mind is like getting to that critical mass point as well, where this starts to become like part of the culture and then it becomes common and everyone understands it and does it. It's like a ritual of sorts. But that's really smart to make sure that you're addressing the new folks that are coming in, not just the handful of people that you see all the time and that you know really well. I'm cognizant of time. If there aren't any additional questions, I would just like to wrap up and just say a huge thank you. Brandon, really appreciate you sharing, taking the time to share your experiences on this. And again, thank you all so much for participating. And Brandon, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. It's always valuable and always much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you, Eric, for putting so much energy and attention into this and making such a great platform for leaders.
I appreciate that. Thank you all. Looking forward to seeing everyone soon.